Greetings everyone and welcome to One Tire Fire. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you know that I'm not the biggest fan of crossovers. I search for every opportunity to criticize crossovers and advise you to buy something else if you don't need the ground clearance. Some vehicles from time to time, some crossovers, change my mind and my perception of such vehicles, although they usually aren't the typical type of crossover. So they have something special. Either they are overtly sporty or they offer few compromises. And I think the car behind me, the Lexus UX250h, is one of those rare crossovers that I actually like. So this striking looking UX is more or less of a replacement to the CT200h, which was previously Lexus's smallest model. That was discontinued, and in 2019, the luxury arm of Toyota decided that a crossover was the best type of vehicle it could create to fill that niche in its lineup. And boy did it deliver. I mean, just look at it. It's quite a special looking thing. Pricing in Romania starts at 39,840 euros with VAT. But for that, you get the UX200, which is just a 2-liter non-electrified model. And since this is a Lexus, probably the best model you can go for is the hybrid, and you get that in 2 flavors, with either front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, like my tester here today. My tester costs almost 50,000 euros. It is the all-wheel drive variant in luxury trim. It is not the top-of-the-line model, but it is pretty well spec'd. It's not missing that many features. The Lexus UX is around 4.5 meters long, so it's not a big vehicle, and you really struggle to call it a crossover. I mean, yes, it is not as low as a conventional hatchback, but it is not the tallest crossover. Lexus has tried to drive the crossover point home by equipping the vehicle with this cladding, although you can have that painted in body color in newer examples. When this particular UX was configured, the option to paint the cladding in body color was not available, but now it is. And I think it transforms the vehicle. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. So my tester is not the F-Sport, which is the sporty, more aggressive looking variant, but it is still a very aggressive looking thing. I really like the grille pattern. The mold for this is apparently done by hand by a single Japanese artisan. And then once it is approved, it is used as the official mold for the plastic parts that end up being used on the vehicle. And I really like what they did here. Since this is the hybrid, it has the blue halo around the logo. I really like these headlights too. With the Nike swoosh daytime running light signature, it's very nice. And very cool looking projectors here. I really love these ornaments. I think these headlights are pretty awesome, to be honest. The lower part of the grille gets this, I wouldn't call it satin, but it's not the glossiest material. It's actually metal. And as you can see, if you look at it from this angle, the grille really protrudes and the front end is quite pointy. It's very cool. And you know that cliche about Japanese cars being styled with a katana? That's the traditional samurai sword. Well, I don't think they come any more katana designed than this, to be honest. Check out these lines. It's super interesting. Not sure how well it's coming through the camera, but it actually makes quite an impression in person. I really like this line that gives the car quite a wedge shape. As you can see, the back end is kind of fastback-ish. It's still pretty sporty from the rear too. The light clusters are aerodynamic features. They mark the return of fins in the automotive industry. And this is not a Cadillac. This is a Lexus, and a very small one at that. But check out the fins. And check out the full width light bar. This is a great looking car. I cannot stress enough how much I like it. Again, maybe in this light you can see the lines better. Overall, the exterior design is awesome. I'm a big fan. Although if I bought this car, and you may have heard this from me in the past, I would slam it, or not slam it, but lower it a little bit. And if it was not an example with the cladding painted from the factory, I would paint that in the same color as the body. And I think that would transform the vehicle. Oh yeah, check out these mirrors. I forgot to mention them, they are awesome. You can tell this is the hybrid by the script here on the lower part of the rear doors, and also the model designation here on the trunk lid. But Lexus gives you no indication as to whether or not the vehicle is all-wheel drive or front-wheel drive. The sporty design does have some negative effects as well, like space in the trunk, which is kind of tiny, just 280 liters. Although there is a hidden compartment here, and you can fold down the rear seats flat. But as you can see, it's quite a shallow trunk. Although with this fake floor here, the load lip, while kind of large, you have to lift stuff all the way into there. But at least you then don't have to lower your belongings into there. You can just like slide them in. You can electrically close the trunk lid. It always beeps. I would do without the beep, to be honest. And let's go into the back. I have set the driver's seat into my driving position, and I just about fit. I do touch the backrest, but I can slide my feet underneath the seat, so at least that's good. And the seating position is actually pretty comfy too. You could definitely cover longer distances in the back of the UX, even though it's quite a small vehicle. However, there's not much to talk about back here. Yes, you get an armrest, you get 2 USBs, but that's pretty much it. You don't even get door pockets in the back. And the material here on top of the doors this doesn't scream luxury. The side windows are pretty big, I have to say. Fairly big for a vehicle that is this sporty, but since the rear glass is split here, you can lower this all the way down and, you know, hang your arm out. Let's move to the front. Stepping into the front, it immediately feels more luxurious. So once aboard, there is no more hard plastic on top of the doors. Every surface you touch is really, really nice. And even here, there's a bit of carpeting in this handle, as well as soft and nice to touch material around it to make it feel nicer and more welcoming. That's a nice, very Lexus touch. The design is, I have to say, absolutely fantastic. I really, really love it, to be honest. It's very unique, it's very Japanesey. Let me just start it up. And it's all of very, very high quality. The screens are not the best, to be honest, both in terms of their resolution and their functionality, although they're not bad. There's nothing bad to say about them. And if you don't like the infotainment, you can connect your Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, which is standard in the UX, whichever version you go for, although you do have to have a physical connection, so you need a cable. The driving position is great, to be honest, at least for a crossover like this. You can get quite low with these optional electric seats, and the steering wheel also has an electrically adjustable column, although to be fair, the range of motion is kind of limited. I mean, this is as far as it'll go. And I just keep it all the way up and all the way out so that I can have a good driving position. And I do like that it feels a bit cozy in here. I don't like sitting on the car, you know, I prefer sitting in it. And the Lexus UX does allow me this opportunity. The electric windows are variable speed, so they slow down at the end. This is a luxurious touch, but it also has a practical purpose in that it makes the pressure change more bearable for people inside the vehicle when the window fully seals. The steering wheel, the leather that wraps it, feels excellent. Even the airbag cover feels nice in this car. The digital gauge cluster is, well, it's okay. It gives you all the information, and if you put the vehicle in sport, it changes to a sporty rev counter, like the one in the Lexus LFA, the greatest Lexus ever. You change the driving modes via this very interestingly placed switch here. So you twist up to go into sport, twist down to go into eco, or press it for normal. On the other side of the instrument binnacle, you have a similar switch for traction control. This one doesn't turn, but you can press it. Let's see if long press turns everything off. It does. There's so much to talk about in this vehicle. Like, for instance, the texture is inspired by traditional Japanese paper partitions that they have in their homes, in their traditional homes. This is inspired by that, the texture. Even the stitching on the seats is apparently a special technique. I can't remember the name, but it's supposedly neither too tight nor too loose, and this keeps the leather taut over time, and the thread that keeps it together doesn't fray, which is pretty cool. And the pattern itself on the seats is very interesting. Lexus is still a brand that is designed to appeal to older, more mature buyers, which is why it still has an analog clock here, which I have to say I also like. And there's even a coin holder here when you open the central armrest cubby thing, which, like in proper luxury cars, opens both ways. So you can open it towards you or towards the passenger. Right in front of this very plush feeling armrest is a set of controls that is quite weird. I'm sure you can get used to them. So you have volume here, then you can change to the next track, switch between radio and your media. There's a tuner knob here, and I'm sure you can get used to these, but it's just a weird solution, to be honest. Then we have the familiar Lexus trackpad, which so many automotive journalists hate. I haven't used one of these in a while, so I can't say I'm used to it. But to be honest, I find it fairly intuitive. It's not the best. I would still prefer a rotary control. I think BMW did it best, which is why everybody else copied it. But Lexus chose a laptop-like approach, arguing that people know how to control laptops and they would not have to adapt to this new control method. To be honest, it's fine. The trackpad itself even has haptic feedback, so you know when you have selected or enabled something. So I guess that's pretty good. It has a few shortcuts that pop up along the bottom. In some vehicles, you get in, you start music on your phone, and it still plays on your phone. And then after a few seconds, it stops and switches to the car. Here, whenever you climb aboard the vehicle, it seems to be already connected, even though you've been away from the vehicle and the Bluetooth was no longer in range. In front are a pair of cup holders with adaptive elements that hold drinks of varying sizes in here, although a very thin can will rattle around. The selector for the transmission is fairly straightforward. It's very straightforward, actually. And even though this car has a CVT, you can even slot it into manual, although it is reversed. So going up through the gears, you push on the stick, and going down through the gears, you pull it towards you. If you're familiar with CVTs, then you know these gears are simulated, and I don't think they're very satisfying. The F-Sport UX also gets paddles behind the steering wheel. Although probably the only real use case for using these simulated gears would be on a mountain road where you would need engine braking to keep things safe. And besides, this vehicle has a dedicated electric motor that acts as a generator. So I assume most of the engine braking is actually motor braking in this vehicle. I don't think it uses the 2-liter 4-cylinder for that. Although I could be wrong. You can tell me in the comments if I'm wrong. Behind the transmission selector, you have a button for the EV mode and then a button for the auto hold. So you also have a wireless charger here, and then you have the most decadently over-engineered 12-volt, 120-watt power outlet. It is damped, and it's so theatrical the way it rises. Moving up, you notice that next to the two seat heating controls, you have an auto thing. So in this car, you can set your seat heating to auto. This is a well-known Lexus feature. They call it Climate Concierge, and the more premium and plush the vehicle, the more climate functions are dealt with automatically, so that you just feel comfortable in the vehicle without even thinking about it. It has sensors around the interior of the vehicle, and it measures the temperature, and it really tries to keep you as comfortable as possible without you doing any work to adjust the climate. For instance, now in this UX, I have set it to auto, and it thinks I need 2 out of the 3 levels of heat for the driver's seat. I noticed that some journalists have commented that they do not like the row of toggle switches for the climate controls, which are physical buttons, by the way. I honestly don't know what they're smoking, because this is not only intuitive, it feels quite fairly high quality. It's okay. I don't have any problem with it. It's great. The stop-start button is bluish, driving the point home that it is a hybrid. I also like the air vents. They feel of very high quality. My tester also has a color head-up display, which is displayed onto the windscreen, so that's pretty good. It's not one of those flippy screens that just look awful and date to the vehicle. I could probably keep talking about this interior, but I think we should take this car for a drive. So I've put the vehicle in drive, and it's starting in electric mode. Let's see how long that lasts. I think this is as good a time as any to talk about this vehicle's powertrain options. So in Romania, you can have it as the UX200, which just has a 2-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine with around 180 horsepower. It is hooked up to the same CVT, or a similar one to what equips this vehicle, and it's the cheapest entry point into the UX range. Then there's a front-wheel drive hybrid model, the 250h, and then there's the one that I'm driving today, which is the 250h E-Four. And there's a lot to talk about when it comes to this hybrid system. So whichever version you opt for, either the standard hybrid with front-wheel drive or the all-wheel drive one, the main source of power is an Atkinson cycle 2-liter engine with a 14:1 compression ratio and a thermal efficiency declared by Lexus of 41%, making it one of the most thermally efficient engines that Lexus has ever made. Then there's a traction motor that provides around, well, a peak of 100 horsepower, 100-ish horsepower, and around 200 newton meters of torque. But Lexus doesn't usually give the combined rating, because as you probably know, the peak power of gas engines and electric motors is delivered quite differently. In a gasoline engine, torque peaks at some point, whereas in an electric motor, it pretty much peaks from 0 RPM until almost at the end of its rev range. Even so, Lexus says that together, these two motors make 184 PS or 177 brake horsepower. The vehicle has another electric motor, but this one never drives the wheels. It is used strictly as a generator. So it is used either for brake regen, from what I understand at least, as well as when the onboard battery pack runs out of juice and the engine kicks into life to top it up. And when it does, it spins the generator, which is different from the actual traction motor. In vehicles with all-wheel drive, they get a third motor that is embedded in the rear suspension assembly thing. It has to be said that even though the Lexus UX is mechanically related to the Toyota CHR, it actually has independent rear suspension. So there's a double wishbone setup at the back there, believe it or not. And you can really tell this vehicle is comfortable. Lexus doesn't seem to rate the all-wheel drive version, the car that I'm driving today, any differently to the front-wheel drive version. It does say that it is 0.2 slower to sprint to 100 kilometers per hour with all-wheel drive. It increases from 8.5 seconds in the front-wheel drive car to 8.7 seconds in the all-wheel drive vehicle. And efficiency for all-wheel drive drops from a claimed between 5.3 and 5.5 liters per 100 kilometers to between 5.9 and 6 liters per 100 kilometers. Top speed for all variants is 177 kilometers per hour or 110 miles per hour. Adding the rear motor for the all-wheel drive version increases the weight by around 60 kilos. And with all-wheel drive, this vehicle weighs over 1.6 tons, up to 1,680 kilograms depending on spec. The 1.4 kilowatt-hour battery pack that drives the hybrid system uses a nickel metal hydride chemistry. It is located underneath the rear bench seat, and it provides enough juice for maybe 2-3 kilometers. So does all that hybrid complexity deliver on the most important front, fuel efficiency? So this vehicle should return around 6 on the combined cycle, But so far during my spirited drive, which was mostly in sport mode because I do enjoy looking at this white rev counter, so far I have averaged 8.8 liters per 100 kilometers. It was 9.2 when I set off today, and it will keep going down. I guess a 7 or just under 7 liters per 100 kilometers rating seems like a good, honest, real-world number. As for performance, I'm not the biggest fan of CVT transmissions, but I guess it does feel like a vehicle that can sprint to 100 kilometers per hour in around 8 seconds. It's not particularly fast, but it's adequate. It's certainly quicker than the older CT200. It feels quite a bit sportier than that. And interestingly, even though this is a taller vehicle with higher suspension, it is actually more fun to drive than the CT. And this is why I said at the start of the video that I do like the UX. It's because it's fairly sharp steering and decent body control really impressed me. I really wasn't expecting it. Although the car does look sporty, the badge usually announces that the driving experience is geared more towards comfort and relaxation as opposed to, Although if you really push this car into a corner, which I did for science, obviously, it will wash wide very easily, especially on these winter tires. It seems that this Lexus UX, just like most of Toyota's newer range of models, are engineered to be more fun to drive than before. And Toyota, generally speaking, and Lexus by extension, wants to be seen as a more fun automaker, as opposed to one that just makes really high quality and durable cars. So, is the Lexus UX a worthy opponent to the likes of the BMW X2 and other rakish premium crossovers, the Mini Countryman, a few others? Well, it is not as fun to drive as the vehicles that I mentioned from the BMW group, but then again, it is not boring either. It is probably going to prove more reliable than any of them, and that's a big plus. I mean, you get a 5-year warranty for the hybrid system, and this includes the battery. The vehicle itself has a 6-year warranty, and you can extend the drivetrain and battery warranty to 10 years. So I think that's pretty cool. The Lexus buying experience is a more simple one for people who don't want to pore over options lists and tick boxes. For Lexus, you have a few trims that vary from country to country, and you can't even add anything to them. You choose the trim that best suits you. You can choose a color and an interior finish and a few other cosmetic options, but that's pretty much it. And while for somebody like me who would configure the heck out of a new car, that's not very appealing, because I would not want to know that after spending $50,000 or euros on a car, there will be hundreds identical to mine. But I'm sure that to some people this prospect is quite attractive. And while Lexus and Toyota are known for their quite conservative approach to electric cars, and by that I mean they are still not convinced EVs are the way to go, and they are still relying very heavily on hybrids, and they also want to promote hydrogen fuel cell vehicles too, as they think hydrogen fuel cell vehicles offer a viable alternative. And to a certain degree, they are right. I will end this video. Thank you for watching until the end, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.